Namaste and good evening to all of you. On behalf of Vivekananda Study Circle, I extend my heartiest welcome to all and request you to put your mobiles on silent mode. We will start today's event with an invocation, and it will be done by Ashish and Vijay. So I request all of you to please stand up for this.
सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय.
As a part of celebration of 150th birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda and with vision of instilling Swamiji's universal ideas, values and thoughts among the youth of IIT Madras, VSC, apart from conducting its regular Sunday classes, has organized various activities like Chennai Heritage Walk for Freshers, inaugural function, interactive talk on the glory of Indian heritage by Dr. N. Gopalakrishnan. 2 days ago, that is on 11th September, a movie titled Vivekananda by Vivekananda is screened at Open Air Theatre, commemorating Swami Vivekananda's historic speech at Parliament of Religion, Chicago. With this small briefing about recent activities of VSC, I now request our chief guest, Dr.P. Kanagasabapathi, to offer flowers to Swami Vivekananda as our tribute to him. Now I request our chief guest, Dr. P. Kanagasabapathi, to come on the dais. Now the VSC volunteer Sean will present fruit bouquet to our chief guest. Vivekananda, once lamenting about India's economic conditions, said, "A nation that cannot provide for its simple food and clothing, which always depends on others for its subsistence, what is there for it to want about? Throw your religious observance overboard for the present and be prepared for the struggle for existence. People of foreign countries are turning out such golden results from the raw materials produced in your country, and you, like ashes of burden, are only carrying their load. The people of foreign countries import Indian raw goods, manufacture various commodities by bringing their intelligence to bear upon, and become great, whereas you have locked your intelligence, thrown away your inherited wealth to others, and roam about crying piteously for food." Who else can empathize better to these words of Swami Vivekananda than our present speaker, Dr. Kanagasabapathi? He is a professor of management involved in studying of Indian economic, business and management systems from native perspectives. After obtaining his doctorate in finance, as a UGC research fellow, he was associated with the capital markets for few years. Till recently, he was the director of Tamil Nadu Institute of Urban Studies, the state-level urban management institute promoted by the Government of Tamil Nadu. He has written 3 books and more than 100 articles in different publications. His book on the Indian models of economy, business and management is considered as pioneering contribution towards giving Indian perspective to the economics and management education in our country, and has been recommended as a reference or text in reputed institute of management and universities such as Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi, and Amrita University. He has another book titled Bharat Economy, Past and Present, presenting the Indian economy and business from local perspectives throws light about functioning of Indian systems. He is connected with different universities, colleges, and institutes of management in different capacities, such as member, governing board member, board of studies, doctoral committee. Earlier, he had served as president of cooperative bank and a member of the working groups of Tamil Nadu State Planning Commission. So before passing microphone to Dr. Kanagasabapathi, I like to mention that we will have a small Q&A session after this. So we will be circulating blank slips, and interested person can write their questions and give it to our VSC volunteers. Now I would like to invite our chief guest for that.
Pranams to Swami Maharaj. Dear brothers and sisters, I am extremely happy to be here during the 150th birth year of Swami Vivekananda to share some of my thoughts and experiences based on our own studies which we have been conducting during the last 16-17 years. India is not just another country. It's a civilization, ancient civilization, perhaps one of the longest living civilizations in the world. But unfortunately, in a period of about 200 years, the history of India, including the economic history of India, was written by the people who ruled us. As a result, whatever history we have is only Eurocentric, West-centric history. So in the last 17-18 years, we are trying to go to different places, economic centers, prosperous centers of India, prosperous industrial centers, business centers, meet with industrialists, entrepreneurs, society leaders, academic institutions to find out the functioning models. What is this functioning models? You know, as a teacher, professor in management, finance professor, I know that most of the theories, almost all the theories that we teach are the Western theories, mostly the American theories in the last 20-25 years. But there is the other side, the functioning reality, the performing sections of the society, what our fathers, parents, and our own community of people do in real life in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of funds mobilization, in terms of various other things, economic activities are totally different. So this is what we call as functioning realities, functioning Indian models. So I am going to explain to you on the basis of some of our studies as to how India remains as a totally different country in terms of her economic functioning. Of course, India's business functioning, management functioning, business systems, management systems, again are different. But I will now give an overall idea about the economic functioning. At the time of independence in 1947, India was a very poor country, underdeveloped country. There is no recognition for India at the global level. In fact, it was written off as a country, a neglected country. So when in 1950-51 for the first time, Indian government started collecting data, it revealed many unpleasant facts about the country. You know, 45% of the people in India were living below poverty line. So out of every 2 families, 1 family was living below poverty line. 18.3% was the literacy rate. 18.3%. The average age of Indians was 32.1 year, slightly more than 32 years. That was the average age of Indians. and around 80% of the population was dependent on agriculture and allied activities. So too many people depending on agriculture and related activities. The industrial and business sectors were very weak. Paul S. Kennedy, earlier Yale University professor, who has written on the rise and fall of great powers in the world, rise and fall of great powers, he notes that in 1900, India's share of global manufacturing was less than 2%, 1.7% to be exact. So India remained in a very bad condition. It was a very poor, underdeveloped economy. You see now after 65 years, in spite of problems that we are having, we all know that agriculture remains neglected. As a result, thousands of farmers commit suicide. Poverty level is not reducing to the extent our planners have been planning. Unemployment is still a major problem. But in spite of all that, you see the other side. India is today the third largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. International Monetary Fund says for the year 2011, India's GDP is $4.6 trillion. All of us know 1 trillion is equal to approximately 56 lakh crores today. Roughly $4.6 trillion is the GDP of India in terms of purchasing power parity, which is used for comparative purposes. So we are the third largest economy in the world today. India maintains her position as the second fastest growing economy in the world, in spite of problems at the economic level due to political and other reasons in the last 1 year. Last year, India's growth rate was 6.5%. But before that, India was maintaining above 8% growth, except when the global economic crisis affected India in 2008-9. So even today, we remain the second highest, fastest growing nation in the world. And India Brand Equity Foundation, a group between the Government of India and CII, says that with more than 85 million entrepreneurs, India is one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. There is one global entrepreneurship monitor. This is published regularly, of course, with not every year. Frequently it is published. 2002 Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, published by London Business School and Babson's College, US. It states that India is the country which has the highest entrepreneurial rate. It says that 17.9% of the population is engaged in one or other entrepreneurial activities. For China, the rate is 12.3. For US, it is 10.5. Of course, the first nation is a comparatively small nation, Thailand. So if you leave that, among the major countries, India is the country that has the largest active entrepreneurial population in the world. We all know that 2008, the global economic crisis affected most of the countries. The Western countries like America and most of Europe is yet to come to grips. But India is one of the countries which is least affected by the global economic crisis. We recovered very quickly, and it is acknowledged at the global level. And India has already emerged as a respected nation at the global level, economic, political level. Now no country can ignore India at the international level. We are already a member in the powerful G20 group. And India is expected to reach the top position in the years to come. Everybody agrees that India will reach the top position, maybe after 10 years or 20 years. We do not know. But all the international agencies, economists, unanimously agree that India has the potential to reach the top position. I'll stop with it. So 65 years back, India was a very poor country, underdeveloped country, neglected at the international level, almost written off. But today everybody respects India. Everybody comes to India. You know, in the last 4 or 5 years, many of the foreign universities, management institutes have been coming to India to study about our business systems, about even our social systems. You might have heard about Dabawalas, how Dabawala case is being used in foreign universities. And this is just one example. A few years back, our own Indian professor, late C.K. Prahalad, he wrote about Arvind hospitals, how Arvind hospitals in Tamil Nadu is functioning much better, much efficiently, more efficiently than the Western hospitals. So many universities are coming here. You know, we all know this 26/11 incident in Mumbai, Taj Hotel, Mumbai. Now, this is used as a case study in universities like Harvard. You know, the theme of that case is Aditi Devo Bhava. You know, when there is a crisis, everybody runs out to save their lives. But in this particular case, the employees of the company, even though they knew the escape routes very well, they did not run away. They wanted to save their clients, guests. So as a result, during the process, some 12 of them lost their lives. This is a very important matter that we have to consider. So there is a case study written on it. So like this, many of the Western universities are coming here to study about India, her businesses, her social systems, economic systems. You know, how did this happen in a period of just 65 years? If you see the economic history of the world, no other country in the world has made such a U-turn in a period of just 6 decades. No other country in the world. What is the reason for this? It is due to the functioning models of India. We have to understand here that the policy making in India during the last 65 years, unfortunately, is not India-centric, in the sense that they don't consider the realities of India and makes policies. Our policy makers always depend on the West. This is very unfortunate, because if you see the economic policies of the last 62 years, from 1950-51, for about 35 years plus years, we have been following the socialistic ideology. So our policy makers felt that the socialistic ideology would be better, so they were following that. Unfortunately, we were not able to get the desired result. So in the late 1980s, Soviet Russia was broken into pieces. So communism failed. So as a result, our policy makers made a U-turn. Immediately they made a U-turn, and then they started adopting the market fundamentalist model, US-driven model. So in the last 20 years, from 1990-91 to 2002 till today, 12, we have been following the US-driven model. So during all these periods, we have not planned for ourselves based on the realities of this country, based on the fundamentals of this country, based on the priorities of this country, based on the strengths and weaknesses of this country. We have been trying to adopt the Western ideologies, one or other. In both cases, during the 1990s, when we wanted to adopt this socialistic ideology, there was no discussion. Again in the 1990s, when we adopted this globalist ideology, again there was no discussion. So without discussions, our policy makers adopted both these policies. As a result, you see the realities now. As I told you, we have enormous problems even today. Critical sectors such as agriculture, small scale industries are being neglected. inequalities are there, and on the one side, if you see, consumerism is on the rise. So these are the problems because of the unsuitable policies of the government. But in spite of it, the economy is growing. That is precisely the point which we have to take into account. So what is the reason for this? The reason is the functioning models. So these models are functioning, I would say performing, despite the government, in spite of the government. In fact, one economist from MIDS, Madras Institute of Development Studies here, some time back when he wrote about Karur, you know, Karur is a famous industrial center, industrial cluster in Tamil Nadu. Karur exports to the tune of 3,000, 4,000 crores. It is well known throughout the world for homemade textiles, for screens, tablecloth, you know, they are selling throughout the world. So while writing the entrepreneurial aspects of Karur, he said, in spite of the government, Karur has succeeded. In fact, whenever we visit these clusters in different states, we have seen that almost all the industrial and business centers have succeeded in spite of the government. There is a UNIDO study that took place about 10-15 years back. That UNIDO study considered more than 130 clusters. In fact, exactly 138 clusters or so. The study showed clearly that out of these 130 plus clusters, only 15 plus clusters are due to the government efforts, and majority, most of the clusters are due to the efforts of the local entrepreneurs. So everywhere the entrepreneurship succeeds here in India, in fact, despite the government. This we have to understand. Both the ideologies of the West, whether it is communism or the market fundamentalism, this everybody accepts now. These are two extremes. In fact, George Soros, one of the well-known market players in the financial and commodity markets in the world, he says that both the extremes are now wrong. He was a capitalist, but during the last decade, he has become a humanist. He feels that the capitalism, financial capitalism, that is the kind of capitalism that is practiced today, won't work for the benefit of the people. So he says that both extremisms, communism and market capitalism, are totally wrong. There was a professor, L.M. Bole. He was associated with IIT Mumbai for a long time. From being a lecturer, he rose to the head of the department. He has written a book that deals with the Gandhian economics. In his book, he says that both the Western ideologies, namely the socialism and capitalism, market capitalism, have been nursed by the same Western worldviews, value systems and lifestyles. So they are all two sides of the same coin, and beyond that there is not much difference. This we have to understand. So the functioning models of India is something different from that of the textbook models. This we have to understand. Before going to the contemporary functioning models, as to how these functioning models are working today, now, I will just give a recap of we will just see the history of economic development in India during the last 4,000-5,000 years, very briefly, because I don't want to delve too much into the earlier aspects, but because I want you to know, I'll touch a few aspects and go and discuss in detail the contemporary functioning systems. You know, for any civilization to prosper, to sustain, we need economics. Economic fundamentals are necessary. So India must have had strong economic fundamentals. In fact, one French excavator, Jean Jarich, Francois Jarich, who studied the Megargar civilization, he says that even 8,000 years back, there was agricultural economy solidly established in India. This is one. There is a business historian, Harvard educated business historian, who studied in detail the history of business during the last 4,000, 5,000 years. He states that even before 5,000 years, India was a great exporting nation. Not just that. He says there were commercial cities, trade centers like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, exclusively dominated by merchants even 5,000 years back. This we have to remember. There is one person by name Vikramaditya Khanna, who is a professor at Michigan Law School now. He has studied the business organizations of India during the last 3,000 years. He notes that even 2,800 years back, he says at least 2,800 years back, there was corporate form of organization here, partnership forms of organization here. There was a very well-known corporate form of organization which was called as Sreni, S-R-E-N-I in those days, and many types of partnership organization. In fact, he compares the earlier corporate form of organization, Sreni, with the modern US corporate form of organization and says that in many ways the ancient corporate form of organization was much better, more logical and reasonable. If you go to his websites, you can see his comparisons. So the point we have to understand is even before 2,800 years, we had the corporate forms of organizations, we had different forms of organizations. So these forms would not have existed unless there was strong economic activity. We all know that Arthasastra was the first economics book in the whole world. In fact, Arthasastra quotes more than 120 authors in his book. Mr. L. N. Rangarajan, who is an authority on Arthasastra, says that economics as a science must have developed at least some 350 years before Arthasastra. That means before 2,650 years, some 27 centuries back. And you know, Arthasastra deals with many modern aspects. So Arthasastra would not have come unless there was need for it. And now comes the most important work of the recent periods. There was a person called Madison, Angus Madison, who died very recently. He is one of the well-known economic historians of the world. He wrote a book comparing the economic performance of countries, different countries in the world during the last 2,000 years. It starts from 0 CE, Common Era 0. So for the last 2,012 years. He says that during the beginning of the Common Era, 2012 years back, when you take the GDP of the whole world as 100 for convenience purposes, India's contribution was 32.9%. So India as a single nation was contributing almost 1/3 of global economic output some 2012 years back. You know, a country could not have produced so much suddenly. That means hundreds of years of foundations must have been laid out earlier. But let us leave the previous years because we don't have comparative data. But for the last 2012 years, we have comparative data. So this shows that India was the topmost, most dominant economic power, in today's terminology, superpower, 2012 years back. China was following us with 26% contribution. So India and China was contributing together 59% of the global economic output. Countries around Asia, they were contributing another 17%. So the Asian countries were contributing 76% to the global economic output. So in the economy, global economy was Asia dominated, India driven economy before 2012 years. This we have to remember. And this continued almost uninterrupted for the next 1,500 years. So till 1,500 CE, we remained as the topmost economic power in the world, always followed by China. Only in 1,500, our position goes to second. China overtakes us by 0.5%. So China's contribution to the global economy in 1500 was 25%, India 24.5%. Again in 1600, India overtakes China and becomes the number one country. But from 1700 onwards, our decline started because we came under the Europeans, Englishmen. So for about 1700 years, we remained the topmost economic power in the world. But for a spell of just 100 years, we remained as the number one economy in the world. And in the written economic history of the world, till date, India remains the most sustainable economy in the whole world. But from the 19th century onwards, especially from 1820 onwards, India's position comes down. Europeans come here, they destroy our economy, destroy agriculture, industries, etc. I have to mention one more thing here. Earlier I was mentioning about Paul S. Kennedy, Yale University process work. He says in 1750, India's share of global manufacturing was 24.5%. So 1/4 of the global manufacturing work was taking place in India even 250 years back. But it came down to 1.7% in just 150 years. So India remained as the exporter, topmost agricultural producer, industrial power in the whole world. But all these things got destroyed in a period of 200 years. If you take, for example, agriculture between 1800 and 1850, Ramesh Chandra Dutt, the economic historian of India, says in a period of just 50 years, 30% of the farmers were driven out of agriculture in the then Madras Presidency, the area to which we all belong. Similarly, India always remained as a power in textiles. India lost her power due to the unsuitable policies of the West. You know how education system was destroyed. As a result, in a period of just 200 years, the Indian native systems, what we call functioning systems of those days, were systematically destroyed. As a result, in 1950, India's share of global economic output was just 4.2%. So from 32.9% during zero CE, in 1950, India's share has come down to 4.2%. You can understand how the powerful economy was destroyed in India. So the point I want to emphasize here is that India had the functioning systems, native systems earlier also, but these were destroyed by the Europeans. And after independence, in spite of the unsuitable policies of the government, in spite of confusions and contradictions at the policy making level, India is emerging as a nation because of the strong fundamentals that we have here. Now I come to the contemporary situation. If you see at present, I was telling you as to how India remains as the third largest economy, second fastest growing economy, a country having 85 million entrepreneurs, perhaps the largest number in the world, etc., etc. See, what are the reasons behind this? I'll just take the most important aspects and then explain to you. All of us know that India is a saving-oriented economy, an economy where lot of savings take place. According to the latest data, last year data, economic survey submitted by the government during this year in February, the savings rate of India, official saving rate, is about 34%. To be exact, 33.7%. So out of every 100 rupees of output here, 34 rupees approximately is saved. This is one of the highest saving in the world. And this is only official saving, we have to understand. Because when we say official saving, whatever the government classifies as saving, investment in banks, investment in small scale industries, insurance companies, PPF, etc. There are indigenous savings methods. In fact, whenever we travel to different places, We come to know there are many methods. I'll tell you, for example, in Western Tamil Nadu, this chit fund system is very popular, chit funds. So people join together, friends and relatives join together, promote chit. Through that they make investments. It is used as an investment mechanism. And now IFMR has conducted a study, Institute of Financial Management and Research in Chennai, which says that 7% of the savings of Tamil Nadu, financial savings, are mobilized through these chit funds. So they play a very important role, but it does not figure out, you cannot see this in official saving category, because they don't know the extent to which the amount is saved and other details. See, take for example gold. Gold is not included in this category of official savings. In fact, we do not have gold mines, very working gold mines today. We get gold from countries like South Africa. Last year, 32% of the global gold output was purchased by our Indian mothers and sisters. 32% of the globe. 963 tons of gold were purchased by us last year. A rough estimate says that there are 16,000 tons of gold with our mothers and sisters in India today. 16,000 tons of gold, and it is not coming under the category of savings in government. But this is a long-lasting savings. We all know how in our families grandmothers give their ornaments to their granddaughters, and granddaughter will in turn give it to her daughter or granddaughter. So this is how gold is passed from one generation to another generation, but it is not taken as savings, unfortunately. So the point is, if you include all these indigenous savings and gold, our savings rate will be much higher. But even if you leave that, 34% is a very, very high rate. So the savings take place at all levels. In fact, we have conducted studies at different levels. I'll just give one example. 7-8 years back, I have asked my own girl students, MBA students, to undertake a study among the lady flower vendors of Coimbatore flower market. That is a very major flower market in Coimbatore. So I have asked the girls to go and study. These flower vendors, ladies, they don't have money every day to buy even their flowers. So they come every morning with just a basket in their hands. They borrow 1,000 rupees from the local financier. He will be sitting there waiting for them. So they will borrow 1,000 rupees, go and buy flowers on the other side, and they will sell flowers till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, by which time they would have exhausted all their flower stock. Meantime, they would have earned a profit of 300, sometimes 400 rupees. They return the money to the financier along with interest, high rates of interest, 100 rupees, 1,000 plus 100, 1,100. So they would still have some 300 or so, 250, 300. They'll take home every day some 100 rupees, 150 rupees. Remaining 100 rupees they save, because 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the chit fund wala will come there. They will save the money, they will give the money to him. So this is how saving takes place in India. We all imagine that ordinary people don't save money. This is not true. In fact, every Indian family, almost every Indian family saves money. We have conducted studies across different parts of the countries at different levels, from poor families, ordinary families, etc. They save money. Because here, every father, every mother takes it as his or her duty to save as much money as possible, because they feel it is their duty to give a better life to their children. They forego their necessities. Many of them even don't have good clothes to wear, but they send their children to better schools, educational institutions. So this is how money is saved in India. We have to understand. Later I will tell you as to how businesses take place because of the hard-earned money saved by our parents and sisters and brothers. So every family takes it as its responsibility to save as much money as possible That is how so much money is saved. If you see the bank deposits today, there are more than 52 lakh crores as bank deposits in savings bank accounts in India today. And this is just one avenue. There is huge amount of money with insurance companies, provident funds, small saving schemes, even official savings. Apart from that, as I told you, indigenous method, huge amounts of money. I will give you one more interesting informative fact. Because I am a finance teacher, whenever I go to the classroom, I will be teaching about the virtues of the stock market, because I myself specialized in stock market for my PhD thesis. But unfortunately, the functioning India does not look at the stock markets favorably, because there are huge risks associated with it. In fact, again we conducted studies regarding this in many places, but I will tell you one interesting study which we conducted among the lady teachers of Coimbatore who teach these finance subjects in the classrooms. You know, when we go to the classrooms, we have to teach these subjects: stock market, options, futures, what are the virtues of investing in stock market. So we conducted a study among the lady teachers some 6-7 years back. 95% of them said they are not investing in stock market. In fact, 74% of them said they would never invest in stock market, but they are the people who are teaching this subject. So the teaching is something different, practice is something different. So practice is the functioning system and teaching is as per their duty. This we have to understand, because we view stock market as a risky avenue. This is the point. That is why today the Government of India, Reserve Bank of India says that for the year 2010-11, out of the financial savings of India, 47% is in the form of bank deposits. And how much is invested in shares and debentures of private companies? Just 1.2%. Why? Because our people are very cautious. They want to be very careful with their funds. In fact, we asked them, different groups of people in Coimbatore, another question in 3 different studies. 99% of them said, for all of them, their family is important. Family security is important. So they consider the security of the families, welfare of the children being more important than higher returns. So they don't want to take higher risks. In fact, the lady teachers whom we contacted, in all their families, their income was second income or third income, but in spite of it, they don't want to take risk and then invest money in stock market. They are very cautious, because the money that they save is not for them but for their families. In fact, I would like to tell you one more thing. Among the lady teachers, 70% of them said, this is very important, 70% of them said whenever they buy assets, they don't buy in their names. They buy in the names of their children, spouses, parents, and in 2 cases, grandparents. So in our society, whatever we earn, it is not just for ourselves. Our parents, our sisters, brothers consider that whatever we earn is not for us, but for the whole family. This is the functioning reality that we have to understand. Next, investment. You take investment. You know, there is a feeling among the educated circles throughout the country that not enough investment is taking place, so investment should come from elsewhere. Our people do not save, invest, make enough investment. This is absolutely not correct. Even at the time of independence in 1950-51, immediately after independence, you know, I was mentioning to you, half of our people were living below poverty line. But at that time, the saving rate of India was above approximately 9%, 8.6%. So even when half of our people were starving for food, they saved 8.6%. And in 1950-51, the investment rate was 8.4%. Investment rate. You know, last year, year before last year, 2009-10, capital formation. This is the terminology we use for investment. 36.5% of our GDP. So about 37% of our GDP was being used for investment purposes, capital formation purposes. It is not a small amount. The Reserve Bank of India in its latest report says that 95% of the investments in India are domestic investments. You know, the investment route was opened for foreigners in 91-92. For more than 15 years, on an average, the foreign investment was less than 1%. Less than 1%. Even today it is not much. Even today it is domestically driven economy. We always compare India and China and say, see, so much of foreign direct investment is happening there. There is not much foreign direct investment here. In 1990s, China had foreign investment to the tune of 3.6% of their GDP. But in India it was 0.5%. So that is why the top administrators said we have to invite more and more foreign investment. You know, a paper was published by two professors from America, one Indian, another person Chinese, Huang and Khanna. They compared the foreign investment of two countries and finally said that the foreign investment driven economy will not be able to sustain beyond a time. It is always better to have domestically driven economy. So we are domestically driven. In fact, we have seen in many places. You take, for example, this retail trade, which is in the news today. 70% of the retail trade is dominated by a community from South Tamil Nadu, community of Nadars. They are from southern districts. How do they mobilize funds? In fact, when they were in farming, depending on farming related activities, agricultural activities 70, 80 years back, they did not have enough money. So what they did? They visualized the ordinary people of this country. They are not MBAs, they are not professors like me, ordinary people. They evolved a scheme for themselves. It's called as Mahamai. In Tamil it is called as Mahamai. Through this Mahamai system they generated funds. And it is this system that helped them to grow economically, and today they are one of the most powerful economic communities in India. You might have heard of a bank called Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank. It is a bank promoted by that community. You will be surprised to know that even today the capital of that bank is just 28 lakhs. Capital of the bank is just 28 lakh. But last year profit was 185 crores. If you see the reserves of that company, it's around 1200 crores. 28 lakh capital, 1200 crores reserves. Tell me which company has this kind of capital reserve ratio? This was a company promoted by the ordinary people of this country without much education. So this is how funds are generated here. We do not need experts from outside to tell us as to how to generate funds. If opportunities are given to us, our people will certainly be able to generate funds locally, because wherever we go, we see this in practice. You know, there is a place called Palladam near Coimbatore. This is one of the important powerloom centers of our state today, powerloom export centers of Tamil Nadu today. When we conducted a study 6-7 years back, we came to know that in that particular center, Palladam, 80% of the exporters, a very high number, 80% of the exporters reinvest all the 100% of their profits every year. Reinvest all the 100%. Even remaining 20%, they were investing between 80 to 90% of their investment. They take for their personal use only 10 to 20%. So reinvestment, what we technically call in finance term as plowing back of profits, is taking place here on a huge scale. That is why if you see even the corporate sector, the equity capital reserve ratio, the reserves will be 50 times, 100 times more than the equity capital of the companies. But in the Western corporate system, if you see there, the equity, the reserves may be 1 time, 2 times, few times more than the equity capital. It won't be 50 times, 100 times, etc. Why? This is our culture, to save as much money as possible, so that even in future something happens, we will be able to face that problem. And the third important aspect of this functioning India is entrepreneurship. I just told you a little earlier as to how India has about 85 million entrepreneurs. You know, entrepreneurship in India is something unique which all of us have to know, because the basis of Indian economy even today remains self-employment. Vidura in his Vidura Niyudi said 5000 years ago, self-employment is the best status in life. Even today, to a huge extent, the system is maintained. You know, the National Sample Survey Organization in its 62nd survey, 2005-6, says that more than 50% of the people even today prefer self-employment in India. More than 50%. And there is a report published by Government of India, but the report is pretty old, but that was the only report available. That's called Oasis Report, 1999, published by Government of India. It says that 53% of the Indians are self-employed people. 53% of the. You compare it with America, 7.5%. 7.5%. You compare it with OECD countries, 16-17%. So India remains even today to a large extent self-employed nation. So as a result, entrepreneurship grows, and the kind of entrepreneurial activities that is taking place will be very, very hard to believe if I give you some of the facts. Again, I will go to the south, because in Tamil Nadu, the western Tamil Nadu and southern Tamil Nadu are the economically most prosperous regions. In fact, western Tamil Nadu comes first. It is estimated that in terms of GDP, western Tamil Nadu alone contributes more than 40-42% of state GDP. Southern Tamil Nadu comes next. You take, for example, Sivakasi, which is in the news today for wrong reasons. Till 80 years back, it was a very small town, or I would say bigger village. People were depending on agriculture. For agriculture, even they did not have good water. They had only salty water. So they did not know what to do. Two people decided to do something new. So they went to Calcutta at that time in 1921, in 2021. We were under the British rule. There was only one match company that was called Vimco company in Calcutta. So these people go there. They'll work as workers there. They learn some business. They return here after 1.5 years. Start their first match unit in 1921. You know, today, Sivakasi contributes 90% of the total cracker manufacturing, cracker requirements of this country. 90%. About 70% of the match industry output comes out of Sivakasi. About 40-45% of the sophisticated printing takes place in Sivakasi. Foreign checkbooks are printed there. Many of us do not know. Checkbooks, high security items are printed there. The airline tickets of many European air companies are printed there. The highest priced dairy was introduced by a Sivakasi man in America 2-3 years back. Some of you might have seen in newspapers. You know, how did this happen in a period of just 80 years, 90 years. Entrepreneurship. Two people decided to do something, they did something, so others noticed it, others also started doing it. As a result, entrepreneurship developed. This is how entrepreneurship has been taking place in India during the last 50, 60 years. You take, for example, Tiruchengodu, a small unknown place in the academic circles in India. But you know, at one point of time, Tiruchengodu was supplying 90% of the rig industry needs of the whole country. So 90% of the rigs were operated by Tiruchengodu people, very ordinary people. How did they develop their rig industry? They don't have engineers, they don't have management people. In the 1960s, you know, it was a drought prone area, Namakkal, Tiruchengodu and all. In the 1960s, some farmers, they did not have enough water, so they wanted to dig their wells. So they got hold of some rig owner, and then they invited him to dig their wells. There was water, they saw it. And his neighbor farmer also had the same problem. So the rig owner was invited there, he went there. So these people thought, when our whole area is having this drought problem, why don't we ourselves buy this rig and involve in this business? You know, why should we be there in agriculture itself, which is not giving enough fruits? So four of them joined together, buy a rig, and then the first rig was used by the Tiruchengodu people in their place. Others saw it, they also went into the business. In a period of 10-15 years, there were many rig owners in Tiruchengodu. Slowly they went out of their districts, out of their state. So as a result, they went throughout the country, and at one point of time, as I told you, 90% of the rigs were operated by these people. You know, today, they have offices in Africa. In Kenya, they have an office. And they no longer involved in digging wells. They go below the sea and then dig. They are not engineers, very ordinary people. So entrepreneurship, you can see how entrepreneurship takes place in India. I will give you another example. You take Surat. Surat is a place where two kinds of major activities take place. One is textile, other one is diamond. All of us know about 80 to 90% of the diamonds cut in India, in the whole world, is cut in India. And Surat and Ahmedabad have a huge share in this. There is global diamond market in Belgium, in a city called Antwerp. That is the global diamond market. Today, more than 2/3 of global trade is done by Indians. The Jains of Gujarat and the Patels of Kathiawar, Saurashtra region. So it is they who dominate the global trade today. Last year, the diamond trade in Surat alone was 70,000 crores. 70,000 crores in one place. So this is how entrepreneurship is taking place. You have to remember this. So this entrepreneurship in India takes place at different levels. We have very ordinary people, as I told you. We have flower vendors, person selling tea in bicycle or pushcart. We classify them as officially as unorganized sector. In fact, they are not unorganized. They are more organized than the organized sector, but borrowing from the West, you know, we call them as unorganized sector. So if you take the very ordinary businesses like that, economic census of the Government of India 2005 says that there are 41.8 million businesses, approximately 4.2 crore businesses, very small businesses. How many are employed in those businesses? More than 10 crores, 100 million people. But how many are employed in the organized sector? Less than 3 crores. Both the government and the corporate sector, less than 3 crores. But 10 crore people are employed in the very ordinary businesses. Now you can compare and understand the situation. Now we have a ministry called Ministry of Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises. This is called MSME sector, Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise sector. The Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise sector 2009-10 report says that there are approximately 3 crore units, micro, small and medium enterprises, small businesses, having their own structure, investment to the tune of so much. Government has defined it. We have 3 crore businesses. How many are employed? Approximately 7 crore people are employed in the MSME sector. And there is the corporate sector. So how many companies are there in India? 2010, Government of India data says that there are 8.73 lakh companies. Country is having one of the largest number of companies in the world, 8.73 lakh companies. So you have these unorganized, very small businesses, you have MSME sector businesses, and you have corporate businesses. And we have clusters. A cluster is a place where a number of units engaged in similar or same business industrial activity is situated. The places I have mentioned, Sivakasi, Karur, Surat, maybe Tirupur, well-known place, Ludhiana, Agra, these are all clusters. Government of India says that there are about 2041 clusters like this. 2041 clusters. And in each of these clusters, thousands of crores worth of activity is taking place. I was telling you, in Surat alone, in diamond industry itself, 70,000 crore worth of business. We all know in Tirupur, 12,000 crore worth of export is taking place. So this is with regard to clusters. And as a result, we have a huge non-corporate sector. This is what we have to understand. The non-corporate sector in India is the most dominant sector. Government of India says that 57% of the national income comes from this non-corporate sector. And the entire non-corporate sector is family-dominated sector. There is corporate sector and government sector. It is estimated that corporate sector contributes to the tune of 14-15%. But even in the corporate sector, 95%, more than 95%, dominated by families. But the small businesses, medium businesses, what we call as non-corporate sector, dominates the Indian economy. This we have to understand. And in the non-corporate sector category, again there is important point which we have to understand. More than 50% of the businesses are run by the people from the lower social categories, so-called lower categories, OBCs, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, etc. So these are the people who are running this business. And how funds are mobilized in these places? Again, you will be surprised to know that funds are mobilized for this non-corporate sector by the promoters themselves. The contribution of financial institutions, the contribution of state banks are comparatively less, very, very less. As I told you, Economic Census 2005 says that the contribution by the financial institutions is just below 3%. More than 95% of the funds are mobilized through the promoters themselves. How? Through their own connections, friends, relatives, local society, local community, etc. In fact, when we undertook a study among the diamond traders in Ahmedabad and Surat, about 80% of them told us that the initial capital, because initial capital is very, very important for any business, the initial capital for all their investment was mobilized through their own relatives, This may be surprising to us, but this is how investments are taking place, financing is taking place in India. So this relatives and friends category play a very, very important role in the Indian economy. And the role of banks and financial institutions at the initial level is comparatively less, because the people who make investments are ordinary people, they are not highly qualified. So it's very difficult for the bankers to go give money, because they have their own systems in place. There is a place called Sankagiri in Tamil Nadu. Sankagiri in Tamil Nadu. It is near Namakkal district. This Sankagiri has the largest number of lorry traffic in the whole country, in India. Largest number of lorries in India. Namakkal is another transport center. Namakkal has two businesses, important businesses. One is transport, another one is poultry industry. In both categories, they play a role at the national level. They have dominant share at the local top level. Sankagiri, another place, they have huge lorries, not the ordinary lorries, huge lorries. They have the largest number of lorries. When we studied them, we came to know that even for working capital purposes, there is a difference between initial capital and working capital. Initial capital, very difficult in the sense that for ordinary people, banks may not give loans. But once you have a business, you can show your profit and loss account details, banker will be giving money to you. So normally for working capital, people go for banks. But in the case of Sankagiri, we found that in 3/4 of the cases, total cases, even for working capital, they are not going for banks. Why? They have their own funds. They use their own funds. This is the problem. In fact, I know in many clusters, wherever we go, the bank managers will say, sir, why don't you recommend, ask your people, the entrepreneurs, to borrow some money from us. They are doing good business, but still they are not borrowing money from us. So this is the situation here. People don't go and borrow unless it is absolutely necessary. In India, the reason for the success of economic activities, business activities, is the amount of social capital that prevails here. What is social capital? We know finance is a capital. Human capital, we all know, people with qualifications, skills, etc. What is the social capital? In fact, this is getting importance only in the last 5-10 years. Social capital is the ability to move with others closely, to believe others, to help others. This is a capital. This is not a very ordinary asset. In fact, this is more important than finance and qualification. We have huge social capital here. Our business centers move on the basis of faith, goodwill, values, norms, etc. We studied Karur finance sector. We have a huge non-corporate sector finance activity in Karur. Karur had in 2001 more than 50 bank branches. Karur is the home for two big banks, Lakshmi Vilas Bank, Karur Vaisya Bank. Both were born there. But when we undertook the study at that time in 2001-2, the requirements for funds in textile industry, I told you Karur is an exporting center. For their textile requirements, the entrepreneurs required 2,400 crores. Today it is more, some 10 years back, 2,400 crores. 2/3 of their funds they were getting from non-corporate finance units. When I say non-corporate, these are the units promoted by their own friends and relatives. 4 people join together, 5 people join together, promote a unit. And Karur is a place where you can see hundreds of such units. In those days when we studied, there were more than 300 finance entities, what we call entities there. So 2/3 of funds were mobilized from them, but there were enough bank branches. So we asked them. In fact, we had interviews with the board of directors, chairman of this Lakshmi Vilas Bank and board of directors of the Karur Vaisya Bank also. They said, sir, we have all huge money. Only thing is people are not borrowing. We asked the people, what is the problem with you? They said, sir, we are all engaged in export business. So our funds requirement are sudden. Today evening at 5 o'clock we may get a news that we have order for some 10 crore, 5 crores. We need funds immediately. If we go to the bank, there are procedures. We have to give them documents. They take time to evaluate. And those formalities are there. But if you go to a local financier, your own friend, your own relative, acquaintance, known to you very closely, he will give money to you immediately. No documents required, no formalities. So that is why we prefer to go there, even though the rate of interest is slightly higher. So that is how people borrow money on the basis of faith and goodwill. And this kind of faith and goodwill is there in almost all the business centers across the country. Even when people from different states, different religious and other backgrounds are involved. Tirupur is a place where you can see entrepreneurs from different states. But even then, on the basis of faith, transactions take place. In fact, World Bank publishes every year a report called World Development Report. In the year 2010, World Development Report 2010, you can go to the website and see that they have written about Tirupur. How Tirupur has emerged as a leader in international hosiery industry. There are textile businesses, textile industries in European states also, countries like Italy. But how is it that Tirupur has emerged as a very successful place? So the report is based on a study. The study says, for any business, the finance is very important. So cost of capital is very important. So when I invest money, normally in business, I may not invest all my money, I may not have the entire sum of money. So I invest some money and borrow the remaining money, either from banks, financial institutions, or if I have good connections, then from my own local connections. This study says in Tirupur, when somebody wants to borrow money, again this is a textile exporting center, so sudden requirement for funds. The report says people do not go to banks immediately. They immediately call up their acquaintances. It may be one's relative, uncle or cousin or friend, and most of the time they get funds. It may be some 10 lakhs or 50 lakhs. Many times they get funds. And for the funds, they don't pay interest many times. Some of the times they pay interest but lower than the market rates. They compare this with Western countries. In the Western countries, whenever an entrepreneur, a businessman wants to borrow, he or she has to borrow at the market rate. But here, not necessary. So as a result, the cost of capital comes down. For Tirupur businessmen, cost of capital comes down. So because the cost of capital is less, the cost of production is less. So they fix sales price at lower rate. Sale price is less. So the report says they compete at the international level quoting lower price. What is the reason for this? The report says it is the social capital. So the social capital enables the businessmen of Tirupur to borrow money at low rate of interest, sometime at nil rate of interest. As a result, their selling price is less. How is it that the people give money to others, their own friends and relatives, without interest? Because he knows fully well after 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, if the other person faces a problem, this friend will help you, this relative will help you. So that is how businesses are organized here. And we have studied as to how in a place like Dindikkal, which is known for leather industry, where different religious communities are involved, even there close relationship exists between all groups. So there is no difference between caste, religion, state, etc. when you go into business. This is very, very important. As a result, our businesses remain society driven, not government driven. So who drives the Indian economy, Indian business? It is the society. I can give many examples for this as to how society drives the business. So in all these places, clusters, business centers, industrial centers, it is the local society that drives the business. Who is responsible for the growth of Surat, Tiruchengodu, Sivakasi, Karur, Ludhiana, Agra? All the local people belonging to different communities from ordinary backgrounds. So this is a society driven economy. This we have to understand. In this business, as I told you, there are unwritten norms, values even today. In almost all the business centers, clusters, there are no written documents even today. It happens on the basis of faith. In Kanpur, for example, where two major religious communities of India are engaged in businesses, no written documents. Belief. This is there everywhere. So this is an economy to a large extent driven by values even today. Not old days, even today. This we have to understand. But how is it happening in the West? I will just give one or two examples and then finish. All of us know in the West, savings is very, very little. You know, till 2005, in countries like America, England, there were negative savings. It is not that they had savings, negative savings. What do we mean by that? Even without any amount of money left in their bank accounts, they borrow, expecting future income, next quarter, next year income. I borrow money with the use of credit cards. So if you take a country like UK, for example, the population of UK is less than the population of Tamil Nadu, less than 6 crores. But the number of credit cards in circulation is more than 12 crores. More than 12 crores. So the party that is ruling England now, Conservative Party, when it was in the opposition in 2005-06, they brought out a report. In fact, it was a type of, a sort of election manifesto for them. It described the status of their economy. The title of that report itself is very important. It said, the title of the report is Breaking Britain. Britain is breaking out. This is the title. So it describes as to how the society has been destroyed, family has been destroyed. So if we want to revive the economy, how we have to build all these things. So as a result, there is no saving. If you take America, for example, the latest OECD report for the previous year, 2009, it says that saving rate is 6.2%, around that figure. For the whole euro area, less than 10%. For UK in 2009, 1.2%. Very low rates of savings. Because savings are low, they don't have enough money in their families. In fact, countries like America and England are considered the most indebted nations in the world. We all know that in America today, the total debt of that country is $16 trillion, more than the GDP of that country. Every day, on an average, America borrows about $2 to $3 billion in the international financial market, about 15,000 crores. Is it for their investments? No, not always. It is to see that their family societies are intact. So they spend huge amount of money towards social capital to protect their families, social societies from further destruction. If you see the public expenditure, social capital expenditure of OECD countries, you will be surprised to know that OECD countries have spent more than 19% of their GDP towards social security in 2007. In US it was more than 16%. And apart from that, there is private social capital, social expenditure. So about 20 to 25, in some countries 30% of the GDP is spent on maintaining these families and societies, social capital expenditure. So they don't have enough funds. So it becomes the responsibility of the state to protect their people. Otherwise, there will be chaos, confusion in the society, breakdown of the society. So it becomes the responsibility of the states, because society is not responsible, families are not responsible. It becomes the responsibility of the state to maintain the societies and families. So in the name of individualism, in the name of market capitalism, in the West, market remains as the core. Market is the core. So in the name of market and individualism, to a large extent, the natural institutions like families and societies are getting destroyed. In fact, it has been already destroyed to a great extent. That is why we are seeing enormous problems in those countries, America, Europe. Even today they are facing that problem because of this. So people are state dependent. People have become state dependent. And the relationship that they have is contract based relationship. I was telling you as to how in Indian businesses even today relationship is largely based on business transactions are largely based on relationship, but they are contract based relationships, not just in business, even in the family affairs. We all know even before wedding, marriage, how they enter into all sorts of contracts, etc., so that if problem comes they can sort it out very quickly. So this is the kind of situation that they have now. So they have the economic system that is functioning on unsustainable foundations. That is why in 2009, after the economic collapse of the West, economic crisis of the West, the well-known economist by name Paul Krugman, he was the Nobel laureate for the year 2008. He openly admitted that much of our past 30 years of economic theories, much of our past 30 years of our economics have proved to be harmful to the society. He openly admitted. So this is the present situation there in the West, because their economic theories have almost failed and they are openly admitting it now. So it is not just the economic system that is failed in the West, their economics itself has failed. And here we have alternative economic system, functioning economic system here in India. So it is our responsibility to recognize this system, to understand this system, and as people who are educated, to improvise this system. I don't say everything is perfect here. We don't have any problems, difficulties. No, we have a lot of problems. We may have problems even in the functioning models. We ourselves have seen. But as educated people, it is our duty first to understand them, recognize that there are functioning models, and then improvise it. So the point that all of us have to understand is that India has her own functioning models. Earlier, of course, I was telling you about ancient India. In those days, setup was something different because they had institutions, well-functioning, time-tested institutions. But today we don't have that. In fact, our government, as I told you, still is looking to the West, to other places to take inspiration. But other countries, other areas, especially the West, we have failed systems only. So it is high time that if we want to emerge as a nation, now in the last 5-10 years, as I told you, indicated to you at the beginning, many of the Western universities are coming here. Many of the management institutes are coming here to study our own systems. One group of professors from Kellogg University, under the guidance of one Peter Capelli, a well-known professor, they came here to study the leadership in Indian companies 3 years back. They contacted top 100 companies in India, chief executives of 100 companies. and they published about it. Now it has come in the form of a book. The title is Leadership the Indian Way. They admit that the leadership pattern of India, position of India, is something unique, something different from that of the Western countries. And what is the reason for this uniqueness in leadership functioning here in India? They say it is the social and cultural foundations of India that decide the leadership functioning in India. So we have to understand that culture has a huge role to play. Unfortunately, in the last 50 years, we have neglected culture. But now, even in the West, in places like America, professors like David Landis, you might have heard his name, they emphasize that culture has a huge role to play in economic functioning, and our scholars have refused to accept this, acknowledge this. But at least now we have to admit, in a country like India, because the huge saving that is taking place, the entrepreneurship activities that are taking place are all due to the cultural, traditional foundations of this country. This we have to admit. And how are we able to promote companies that have unique qualities, whether it is Arvind Hospitals or a Narayana Hridayalaya Hospital in Bangalore, which has the highest number of foreign visitors, which is perhaps the most effective heart hospital in the whole world. Our culture, cultural factors. Why inventions take place at a huge rate, at the local level at less cost. In fact, before his death, C.K. Prahalad, with our own former CSIR director, Mashelkar, he wrote a beautiful article in Harvard Business Review, which studied the innovations that have been taking place in third world countries. And they particularly mention India as to how innovations take place here at low cost, cheap rate. So they mention Maruti car, they mention our own mobile phones. They list out certain few companies and say innovations take place in the Gandhian way in India, because our own people are capable of doing it. In fact, I have seen in many places in India as to how innovations take place. I will give just one example. There is a person in Tirupur. His name is Sundaram. He will be about 45, 46 years old now. Some 10 years back when we met him, he was a very ordinary person. You will be surprised to know he has studied up to only 3rd standard. He has failed in his 4th standard, studied up to 4th standard. So from young age he was working as a laborer in a few companies, few workshops. He always wanted to do something on his own. He did not know what to do. He tried so many things. Then he, in Tirupur every year exhibitions take place where foreign buyers come for machineries, etc. So in one such exhibition he saw a machine, that is compacting machine. This machine is used to remove shrinkages after all work is done. So he thought we can do better machine. At that time, American multinational company was the sole seller in the whole of India. So this company was selling that machine. He thought, why don't we do a better machine? And nobody could believe him. In fact, he went and told his father, I want to start a company, I want to manufacture, make a machine like that. He wanted his help. He said, you have already failed in 4th standard, and you have a sister and one more brother. How can I give money to you? You go and work somewhere. But he pestered his mother. All mothers have their own separate accounts, personal accounts, money. So his mother, she had some money because they had a cow, and then she sold milk, and then she got that money. And mothers have soft corners for the sons. So he went and pestered her. She gave all the money that she had, 30,000 rupees at that time. With that money, he started his activity. And within a few years, he developed a machine at 1/3 of the cost of the American machine. So in one of the years, later years, he put that machine at the exhibition. The American multinational company was surprised because an ordinary person making a machine at 1/3 of the cost of their cost. So they went to him, talked to him, you make machine, you sell in our name, we will give you royalty. He said, no, I want to make my own machine with my own name. I won't sell to anybody. So this is how he started making machine, and today he is the sole selling manufacturer of that machine. He has thrown out that company out of India. He is selling not just in India, in Pakistan, Nepal, Ceylon, Bangladesh, all countries around India. Very ordinary person. So this is how innovations take place. Department of Science and Technology says, Government of India says that 30% of the innovations in India take place through illiterates. Illiterates. You may be knowing Anil Gupta of IIM is collecting innovations taking place at the grassroots level, ordinary level. What is the reason for this? What is the reason for this? Culture of this country. So we all have to understand that this culture of this country and the foundations of this country, like families, communities, etc., play a huge role in deciding the economic functioning. And we have to understand, and I want to emphasize this, that we have a functioning model here, and this functioning model is something totally different from the textbook models that we teach in India. I end my speech with a quotation from Galbraith, John Kenneth Galbraith. He was an economist. He was ambassador to India at the time of Nehru, when Kennedy was the president there. Nehru was the prime minister here in the 1960s, early 1960s. He was here as his ambassador. Then after 40 years, nearly 40 years, he came to India in 2001. Before his departure to America, he gave an interview to the Outlook magazine. In that interview, he said, I quote just 2 lines from his quote, I quote, Galbraith says, I wanted to emphasize the point, which would be widely accepted, that the success of India did not depend on the government. It depended on the energy, ingenuity, and other qualifications of the Indian people. And the last line is, we have seen many years of Indian progress, and that is attributable to the energy and genius of the Indian people and Indian culture. Thank you very much.
Those who want to ask question can raise their hand. And if someone wants the blank slip, they can contact the VSC volunteer.
Hello. First, thank you, sir, for such a nice, descriptive and very knowledgeable session. My question is regarding the subsidies.
Okay.
Please elaborate on that. Means, are they fit for India? How subsidies are the concern?
Yes. It's a huge subject, but just I will mention a few points. This is the distortion due to the current economic system. We have to understand that the highly industrialized nations, Western countries, such as America, many countries in Europe, they offer huge subsidies to protect their agriculture. Agriculture contributes about 1 to 2% of the GDP of America, and many European countries it's around 5%. They offer huge subsidies, thousands of crores. So if you keep land vacant, you will get subsidy. If you have cow, you will get subsidy. This is what happening in the West today, because they want to protect their agriculture. So for a country like India, in the present situation, subsidies are required. I don't say that subsidies of all kinds. As I told you, this is a huge subject which we have to discuss in detail. But we cannot discount it as unwanted, because in certain cases we may need subsidies today. But this is because of the present system of economic functioning in different countries. You know, without equality in terms of competence, in terms of trade and other matters, somehow we have become all one. Whether you like it or not, you are equal. So in this case, the subsidies are required. That is.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
My question is, like lot of people emphasize on using Indian products.
Yeah.
So, but lot of us don't know which are made in India or made in other countries.
Yeah.
So, what's your view in this?
In fact, there are lists prepared by certain groups of voluntary organizations which say that which are the Indian companies, which are the foreign companies, etc. So this India versus rest, this concept of what I call Swadeshi, this is there now even in the West, you know, in US now, very recently, some 4 days, 5 days back, Obama has said that we have to stop people coming from China. And about a month back he said, there is competition from India and China, somehow we have to protect. So this domestic economy protection, this kind of view is coming in different places. But we cannot make it as a rule, it is very difficult. Ultimately, in the long run, whoever makes good product, he or she will survive. But if you want the list of companies, domestic companies, foreign companies, lists are there in use now.
Sir, I have a question. What do you think is the reason that China leads India in percentage of growth by a very high margin? Is it because of the virtual autocracy that exists there?
See, there are many reasons. I would suggest that we should not compare countries. Of course, for convenience purposes, even I have compared. But we cannot compare countries on the same basis, because the history, backgrounds, the foundations of different countries are different. But here, as I told you, the Chinese progress, economic development, is primarily based on their political outlook, because they have one party rule, so they can do whatever they like. As I told you, during the last 20-30 years, they have been encouraging exports through all means. Here we cannot do this. Here there are problems, different kind of problems, etc. And so the kind of progress that is happening in China is based on different sets of factors. And many reports say that their figures, GDP figures, growth rate figures, are not real figures, they are fudged, because it is the government that puts out the data. You can't question them. But in a country like India, it's not possible. This is a democratic country. So there are different reasons for this. But we need not worry about other countries and always compare ourselves with other countries on all parameters, all counts. It is not necessary. Now you may be knowing that GDP figure itself is becoming meaningless, because GDP figure is based on certain assumptions, and which is always not correct. Next.
Sir, if we see in malls and supermarkets,
Yes.
so everyone wants to buy all the things that single go, and people prefer going to supermarkets and malls. So because of that, small scale vendors in say every corner of a street, so they are out of business. So even though these malls and supermarkets create some employment, but in a larger scale, they are the cause for rich becoming richer and poor becoming poorer. So how do we address this?
Yes, this is a serious issue. This is due to the current economic system. You have on the one side these malls, on the same side you have we have people, of course minor percentage of people who are driven by this consumeristic attitude, going to the mall, buying more than what is necessary. In countries like America, people go there, buy a lot of things and then stock in their houses. In fact, houses function as storage godowns in families. But in the traditional Indian system, it is not like that. So on the one side, we have this kind of developments. And due to this, as you rightly said, to an extent there is a problem for the small scale sector, ordinary seller, vendor, etc. This we have to address this in the long run. And only time alone will tell as to how we are going to deal with this, because India is a huge country and you have different kind of population having different types of incomes, lifestyles, etc. So it's a very serious issue which involves lot of discussions, players, etc. It will take time to solve this issue, but we need not unnecessarily worry about it in the long run, because I believe that in the long run our people will understand this, because we have seen in for example Bangalore, metro came there about 2-3 years, about 5-6 years back. They could not continue their business. They could not continue. So this our Indian society may not accept these things to a large extent. There may be a group of people who would like to go and buy. Let them buy.
Sir, you said that we in India at an average save 34% of our income. And you said that it's a function of our culture. But is it not the, because, for example, if tomorrow I fell ill or I have some other, uncertainties, this save fund will help me. Whereas when you go about talking about something, Western country, the government will take care of me. So if, tomorrow I don't have money and I fell ill, government will pay for me. Or if I'm old, I don't have reserve, they'll take care of me. So it's not the, is it not the function of let's say the uncertainty that the government doesn't back me up, that we save this much? Because if we talk about US, say 50 years back, even they would save 25% of their income, which is now pretty low.
I'll tell you. See, we have to understand the Western governments, US, European governments. They are not willingly doing this. They are doing this because families are not doing this. Families are not doing this. This is the problem. In America, I lost count now. The government of America has appointed committees, more than 10 committees, to see whether the social security system can be shifted from their hands to the others, private sector, because they don't want to do it. Which government would like to spend 20% of their GDP, 25% of their GDP every year to help these families? No government wants. They are doing this because families are not doing this. The family system got destroyed in the last 40-50 years in the name of individualism. So that is the reason why the government has to take up this, and they are not doing this willingly. We have to understand. Now the Western governments are facing serious economic problems because of this. 1/5, 1/4, in some cases almost 1/3 of their GDP every year goes towards this income, goes to meet the needs of these people. So they don't want to do it. So it is the destruction of family system, cultural system, that is responsible for the government to take up that social security system. And they are not willingly doing it today. Here in India, even today, in spite of all problems, all developments, our families are taking care of this. As a result, we are saved. Don't think, when a family itself cannot save its members, how can you expect the government from Delhi and to come and help each of the families? How many crores we have about 20 crore families in India now. Can we expect Dr. Manmohan Singh to come and help all the families here? It's not at all possible. When we cannot help ourselves, 4 or 5 or 6 of us, how can we expect government to come? And you know, the social security system, the Western experts say, is going to collapse in another few years. So it is the failure of culture, lack of culture, that compelled the governments to go and help them. This is the point that we have to understand. Yes.
It's nice to hear that the community-based and illiterate people were able to make some kind of economic activity and it was successful. How much of it is returning back in terms of tax to the government?
How much of?
How much of the economic activity? Most of it, since you said, are being in the unorganized sector without any documents and things like that. So how is this the profit or something like that gets back into the government system through tax? So the question what I'm trying to ask is, are the undocumented economic systems trying to avoid the tax system?
No, I'll tell you this. Self-employed sector is the largest income tax paying sector in the country. 45% of the income tax of the Government of India goes through the self-employed sector. So I said undocumented because the undocumented, the transaction that is taking place, when I say transaction, monetary transaction, during the time of need, it takes place through on the basis of faith and goodwill. So we need not assume that all the ordinary people of this country are cheaters, they cheat. All the educated people pay regular tax. No, it is not like that. How much of the corporate sector pays tax? How do you know? So this is a very difficult question. If corporate sector is irresponsible, maybe to an extent non-corporate sector is also irresponsible. But we need not see this from this point of view. When I said no documents, I said on the basis of this help, mutual help, understanding, etc. Otherwise, to your pointed question, 45% of the income tax of this country goes through the self-employed sector. Okay, next.
Hello, sir. So thanks for the informative session. Sir, my question is, I'll just take forward this question. The examples which you gave, like Karur, Shivkasi, etc., it's in the unorganized sector. So the government has no regulation on that. So we see that the Shivkasi, the factory, etc., and the safety issues or child labor. This kind of activities are, they encourage this kind of activities. The government has no control over that. So is it something of a concern?
So it is the problem of the government. It is not the problem of the people. American Insurance Group, AIG, was the second biggest insurance company in the world. It failed in 2008. Why did it fail? The biggest companies that failed in 2000 and the companies that failed in 2008 during economic crisis was the biggest companies at the international level. Very big companies. How did they fail? So it is not because of the rules, regulations. It is because of the people who are running it. So when we discuss whenever we discuss the ordinary businesses of this country, we always have an idea they cheat, they don't follow rules and regulations. There may not be rules, but it is for the government to fix the rules, decide the rules. At the same time, we have to understand for the corporate sector, for big multinational companies, there are rules. You know, Walmart violates all kinds of rules, labor rules. We don't speak rules for them whenever we discuss about them. So we have to understand this. These are all uneducated people, ordinary people, normal people. It is our responsibility. People like us should go and help them to frame guidelines, rules, regulations, etc. You know, we have to understand, in spite of all difficulties, problems, they are coming up in the hard way. All of them are not cheaters. All of them, they don't cheat. This we have to understand.
Good evening, sir. Actually, I have one question. Like, I came from some villages in Andhra. At that time, nowadays in villages, every farmers what we are seeing 10 days back. Now they are all fed up with the pharmacy.
Yes.
The thing is, they are paying 2 rupees rice, or they are not getting the good rice, and that means cost. That means after the completion of the rice, the government deciding rate, and they are giving something which is unreasonable, because they are fed up with water and this water they are getting seeds. That is also not good, and finally the this fertilizers also not good. So I have seen that one. There is a villages, they are totally banned the pharmacy now.
Yes.
It is happened. So it will now government has to concern about these issues in which way, if it is.
Yeah, that's what I told you. The policy making in India is not based on the priorities, requirements of the Indian people. That is the problem. That is why the critical sector like agriculture, you know, we have 1/6 of the humanity here, 1/6 of the global population here, more than 120 crores. So if we neglect agriculture, we cannot go and beg for food anywhere. There is no country in the world which can provide food to us. We have all the necessary background here for agriculture. We have lands, we have sunshine, we have farmers who have enough traditional knowledge. We are neglecting it. It is the fault of the government. That is why I told you for the last 65 years, we never look at our own people. We look to the West and then try to learn from them. One of our friends was asking a question earlier, you know, regarding subsidies. He asked the question, you know, as I told you, 1% of the population, 2% of the population is dependent on agriculture in the West. They are providing so much, huge amount, crores of rupees. Every day in the Western countries, $1 billion, more than 5,000 crores is being given as subsidies alone, for agriculture alone. And we have to compete with them. How is this possible? So the government should do something. It has to frame policies based on our priorities. It is not happening now. That is why I said the functioning models of India is different. If we wanted to go further in terms of progress for all-round development of the people, we have to frame policies based on our own priorities, our own requirements, based on our strong foundations. Yes, Professor.
A small point.
Yes, Professor.
How about the pollution that is now being created by the small scale sector? The small so-called SME, now they have contributed a lot to the pollution in the country.
Yes.
Don't you think that's an undesirable?
Yes, Professor.
Government is failing in that.
Yes, government is failing with regard to pollution, not just in the case of small companies, even big companies. That is the problem. You might have heard about some companies here in southern district as to how they violated rules and all. This is a very serious issue, Professor. Engineering people, you have to come out with solutions. Maybe we can submit it to the government. Otherwise, from the government side, as we have seen, there is nobody to look at this. In fact, some of our own people, institutions, voluntary agencies, we have to do it. Otherwise, this is a very serious issue. You know, when I said Tirupur is a very prosperous place, we have to openly admit that Tirupur is responsible for polluting the river, Noyal River, and there are huge problems there. So there is negative side also. This is another issue which we have to look into.
Just one more. How about the technological aspect of development? These small industries, they contribute so much to the technological development as the corporate sector. Are we not dependent so much on foreign know-how for advanced technology? Can this small industry contribute that? Do we need foreign capital for technological development?
Professor, in fact, we have not studied it in detail, that particular aspect. But we have seen one thing, at the local level, non-corporate sector, and in the case of medium industries also, lot of improvement has been taking place in terms of technology. It's by the local people themselves. So what I see, The local people have skills. Maybe institutions like IIT, many engineering colleges, we have to turn our attention to them, and we have to help it. In terms of technology at the top level, maybe wherever it is required, we have to go and we have to make investments. So that is why I feel that all policy making in India should be based on our own requirements, our own priorities. This is what we have to do. Once we start doing this, then all these problems can be solved. Thank you.
Sir, I have one question. Like you said, in the many small or startups, they go to the, instead of going to the banks, they go to the local support or relatives. But like in my close relations also, I have seen these kind of things. But I have witnessed the many crimes also in that, because I have seen many local, the bunny layers are the rowdies. So they actually, when it comes to the returning the money, they actually follow violent ways.
Yes.
And nobody can sue them, because if you go to the banks, you have proper proof to go against them. But in this case, how do you?
Yes, it is again the failure of people like us, educated sector, government policy making. I was telling you about the lady flower vendors. The ordinary people, of course, they have a lot of entrepreneurial skills. They do business in spite of paying high interest rates. In fact, there should be a mechanism to help these small people through which they can get loans at market rates. But the rates that they pay is 3 times, 4 times higher than the market rates. It's really pathetic. It is true that in some cases, in the case of money lenders, because of these problems, and these people are driven to death, commit suicide, etc. It is the negative side. So certainly institutions should be established to help the ordinary people. In fact, the ordinary people who are very successful in business in the non-corporate sector pay high rates of interest, very high rates of interest. It is really pathetic. We have to do something. The state, the government should do something.
Some written questions. I am reading them one by one. Thank you, sir, for the beautiful lecture. One thing that was visible from your speech is that illiterate people are playing bigger role than so-called educated people. Why are educated people lacking responsibility and love for their own motherland? What is the problem with our education system? Thanks.
In fact, there are enough professors here who will be able to explain this much better than me. But we all know the last few years after the Western education system was introduced, we are cut off from our roots. As a management teacher, I can tell you that in the modern education system, management education system, as I indicated to you at the beginning, whatever I teach cannot be related to the reality. It cannot be related to the reality. For example, as a teacher, I go and teach them what we call Black-Scholes model. It is a model which got Nobel Prize for the authors. These people, the Nobel laureates, along with other professors, they were part of a company called Long-Term Capital Management. So after getting Nobel Prize, this company became very popular because for the first time, people saw Nobel laureates involving in the affairs of a company. The company was run by professors with PhDs, many of them from MIT. If you see the list, you will understand. And initially the company was making profit. In 1998, these people got Nobel Prize in 97, 98. When the results came, the company suffered a loss of $4 billion. You convert it into Indian rupees today, 22,000 crores. So the entire stock market of America, Wall Street, failed, collapsed. The Federal Reserve Bank had to go ask the big financial institutions to help Wall Street to recover. Otherwise, Wall Street itself will fail. So the financial institutions, big financial institutions, through the advice of Federal Reserve Bank, they helped them to recover. So the company, which was advised by the Nobel laureates, failed. So the theory that they advanced, that they said, for which they got Nobel Prize, is being taught even today in classrooms across the world everywhere. I specialized in an area called efficient market theory. In fact, this is the theory which governed the stock markets, financial markets of the world, especially the West, for about 20-30 years. But you know, today, you take for example, you might have heard Warren Buffett, the second richest man in the world. His company, Hathaway, his company's co-chairman, he gave a convocation address in an American university a few years back. Munger, his name is Munger. This Munger said, you academicians all study about this efficient market theory. And the efficient market theory, we have all varieties. As I told you, there are different kinds of models which the authors thought would be used in stock market to make monies. This is the theories that we teach in classrooms. But the company which makes the highest amount of profit through stock markets, he says, the company says that we don't even give an ounce of attention to these theories. In his convocation address in California, Munger openly said, you academicians advanced these theories. We don't even pay in our company an ounce of attention to this. So this is the kind of theories that we are teaching. So there is a huge disconnect between what we teach and what is happening. This is due to the modern education system, and this we have to change it.
The next question is, how can Aryabhatta theories be implemented today? I think he means Chanakya.
How can?
How can Aryabhatta's theory be implemented today? I think he means Chanakya.
His name is? No, Aryabhatta I don't know because I am not a scientist. I can answer only.
Chanakya, I think.
You know, all Chanakya's principles may not be relevant today because today's policy may not be relevant tomorrow. So when we say Aryabhatta, his was the first economic theory, most economic text book. We don't mean that all his ideas are relevant today. We only say that even in those days, we had economic science for which he developed a book. So we can learn from him, we can go through that. To the extent that it is helpful, we can get. Otherwise, we need not worry about it. I don't have time. Otherwise, I would explain how certain principles of Chanakya are relevant even today. I won't say the entire book is relevant. So whatever it is relevant, you know, what can you learn from your grandfather, great-grandfather? You cannot learn everything because his times were different. Your time is different. So whatever is useful, you can learn. Otherwise, you cannot go and raise your doubts in the classroom to him. He may not know. So to the extent that they are helpful, we can utilize.
Sir, please suggest us some books for a beginner to go through this subject.
For which subject? You know, this is a very big area.
I don't know.
This is a very big area. So we collected details from different places. And of course, on entrepreneurship, you have books. Those who are interested to learn about this more on specific subjects, you can contact me, I will suggest. Otherwise, whatever I have said, it is collected from different books. So if I suggest, I have to suggest my own book, which I don't want to do it. So if you want specific areas, you know, finance, entrepreneurship, I will certainly suggest books. You mail me, you get my mail ID from Vivek, I will help you.
Despite our sustainable economic models, why we have so much of corruption? How old is corruption in India? Was it in ancient India?
I have not studied about corruption in ancient India or even contemporary India today. But I can only say that in the earlier days, you know, in every society there will be problems, limitations, etc. In ancient days, to the extent that I have studied economics, there were checks and balances. I would not say everything was perfect, 100% perfect, ideal world. To the extent, to a maximum extent, there were guidelines, rules, regulations, etc. There must have been violators because if you study Arthashastra, you can see, you know, harsh rules for those who break the guidelines. For merchants, there are strict rules. Traders, there are strict rules. So in every society you will have. But earlier society, of course, it was based on strict guidelines, rules. today lot of problems are there. You know how the contemporary political system is functioning. So I don't have a solution for this. It has to be decided on the basis of huge debate.
There was no mention of Japanese model of economics industry. Please tell us how Japanese model stands in comparison to India and West.
Yes. See, Japanese model of industry business is again, economy is to a great extent again based on the family relationship concepts, because if you can notice one difference, distinct difference between the Western model and the Asian models, India, China, Japan, etc. The Asian models are more dependent on the family system, whereas in the West it's mostly individualistic system, market dependent system. So this is one distinct features. As far as the Japanese system is concerned, it is more based on, as I said, they have their own cultural traditions. Of course, we have very many similarities, but there may be certain distinct differences also. In at least till recent years, a person who joins a company in Japan, he works there forever. So lifetime employment is there. They don't send outside. And in Japanese companies, for a long time, decisions are taken on the basis of top groups. They combine together and make distinctions. So to a great extent, we have similarities, but we have differences also. But one thing I can clearly say is the Asian economic system is largely family and relationship based, whereas in the West, it is to a great extent absent. I will not say totally absent. It is there in some countries, even in some America, it may be there in some groups. There is a particular group called Amish group. To a great extent, they follow the old traditions. In fact, they don't go for modern gadgets, etc., because they strictly follow their own previous system. There are difficulties associated with that, so I am not praising them, but there are groups which follow their own cultural, traditional beliefs.
Sir, I think it's a very basic question. What's the relation between currency printing and gold in the country? Why is the difference between currency value? Why is there difference between currency value in different countries?
I'll answer briefly because I would have liked to answer for want of time. I'll just mention about the second aspect. The first aspect, printing and gold standard, you can refer any book, it is available. As far as the second aspect is concerned, why these values are different, we have to understand in the contemporary system in the last few years. Now the values of the currencies are fixed on the basis of market movements. A currency is a medium of exchange. For example, this pen, if it is worth 10 rupees, I have to pay 10 rupees and buy. If there is demand, I can pay 15 rupees, 20 rupees and buy. Similarly, this mic may be 500 rupees. So we pay and buy. So the currency is a medium of exchange. But unfortunately, in the contemporary system, currency itself has become a commodity. Currency is a medium of exchange only, but now currency is a commodity. So the currency is traded in the market and the value of the currency is decided on the basis of the market values. So this is the basic problem. And that is why we are facing this kind of problem. That is why you can see an economy may be strong, but the value of the currency will be less. You can see the Western countries borrowing huge amount of money, but whose currencies command a higher value. This paradoxical situation is there. This is because now the values of currencies are not based on the economic worth of those countries, but based on the market values decided in the market. So currencies itself have become commodities. Okay, next.
India is ranked 138th in the Ace of Doing Business index published. Ace of Doing Business index published by World Bank. Is this a concern?
Yes, certainly this is a concern. We have to improve, but we have to understand that, as I told you earlier, whenever we compare countries, we should not take the same yardsticks and then compare. This is a very, very serious issue. You take, for example, I'll take a minute to explain this. Human Development Report. This comes out every year. And you have this Human Development Index. And you always say, India is ranked 130th, 140th. So which countries come first? Sweden, Norway, But you see the position there in Norway and Sweden. In a country like Sweden, for example, 70% of the people don't marry. They live like animals. They move with others, live with others as long as they live, and then they disappear. So there are no family system. As a result, their societies are in trouble. In future, you know, they don't know whether they will be able to survive as a country. Lack of population. You know, for the next year, 10 years, it is estimated that Europe would require 100 million population, 10 crore population, to continue with the same growth, 2% growth, 3% growth. This is a big concern. But they are ranked at the top level, Human Development Index. Why? Because, you know, they take some 2-3 yardsticks and then compare it. This kind of comparison is not correct. This is not reasonable. But they are using it. Okay, we have to accept it, but we need not worry too much about it. You know, you have to see one more thing. Whenever we compare a country like India with Sweden, the population of Sweden is slightly more than the population of Chennai, 80 lakh population. And how can you compare that with a 125 crore population populated country like India? It's very difficult. So when we compare, you please be careful. You study that, but you need not be worried too much about it. I don't say that we don't have any problem. We have serious problem, but you need not be too much worried by seeing these index numbers, etc.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, again for this informative speech. Now, I would like to invite Uday to present a set of books to our chief guest. Now I would like to call Pranav to present Memento to our chief guest. Now Vivek will deliver vote of thanks.
Respected Swami Atmashriddhananda ji, Professor Sabapathi ji, VSC volunteers, supporters, we've come to the end of very nice lecture, which will be one of the key milestones in the activities of VSC this academic year 2012-13, as a part of celebrations of 150th birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. VSC in its 16th year is run by successive generations of students. Is driven by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. We at VSC study Swamiji's life, his teachings as a group with a guide. At this juncture, we thank Swami Atmashriddhananda ji, who has been guiding us with his untiring spirit for past 8.5 years. Also, I would like to thank the Mylapore Mutt for their continued support. VSC is fortunate to have the support of those few great men. Personally, I would like to congratulate and thank passionate VSC volunteers, past and present, for their good work, organizing Sunday lectures every Sunday, where we take up many interesting topics for discussion. Thanks are also due to our speaker, Professor Sabapathi ji, who has taken his time out to be present with us this evening. We really got benefited from the lessons that you have shared with us about existing entrepreneurs and the way system works here in India. Thank you, sir. I also thank Professor C. Balaji, Distinguished Professor of Mechanical Department, who is also the faculty in charge of Vivekananda Study Cycle. Also extend my thanks to Director, IIT Madras and DM students for being constant source of support for VSC. For all the IITM, for all the infrastructure and moral support whenever needed. To Mechanical Engineering Department for providing classrooms for Sunday classes. Also, we thank CCE for providing video coverage to all special lectures. Thank you all for making this evening a successful one.
Now Ashish and Vijay will chant Shanti Mantra.
Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्.
So, a couple of announcements before concluding this event. This Sunday, Sri Ramakrishna Mutt Chennai is launching 3D movie on Swami Vivekananda at Vivekananda Illam. Our director, Dr. Bhaskar Ramurthy, will be chief guest for that event. I think we have given an invitation card to all of you, and even if your friends who doesn't have invitation card, they can also attend the events. And second is about ordering books from VSC library. Now it can be done through online portal by going on VSC website, that is vsciitm.ac.in. Now with this, I would like to thank you all of you for being us today. Namaste.